History. Hall of Famers Dick Herbert, Smith Barrier, and Furman Bishop. He received the Marvin Skeeter Francis Award for Distinguished Service and Coverage of the Atlantic Coast Conference in 2013. He served as president of the U.S. Basketball Writers Association in 2012. He's a member of the Pike High School and U.S. Basketball Writers Association Halls of Fame. He covered 36 Masters golf tournaments, 17 World Series, and 31 NCAA Final Fours. And yet, he's still the same unassuming good man that I've known for over 35 years. Now my honor to present for induction into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame, Lenox Rawlings.
When I was a boy growing up in Wilson, my grandfather would pick me up on Sundays around lunchtime, and we'd drive downtown to the Cherry Hotel newsstand, which was across the street from the train station. And he would buy a New York newspaper, and then we'd ride over to Fleming Stadium and enjoy a lazy hour or so before a Carolina League game. And I'd lay across the back seat in his Buick Special and get lost in the sports pages of the Herald Tribune or the Times. And then we'd ask each other questions and exchange opinions, none of which I remember specifically. But I do remember feeling completely at peace. It's impossible to say when my love of sports and when my love of the language met at a crossroads. But one thing led to another, and now that I'm my grandfather's age, I'm somewhat astonished to find myself standing here tonight accepting this great honor. There are lots of people to thank, beginning with my family, who taught me the difference between right and wrong, and encouraged me to be myself, and told me to do whatever I wanted to do in life. My parents read at the beginning and the end of every day, and they took us to the library regularly. My mother later worked there. My father, Lenox Jr., was a masterful storyteller with a dancer's fine sense of timing, and he could leave a room roaring with laughter. My mother, Gloria, had a dry wit and precise powers of observation and considerable insight into the human character. When I was about 11, she handed me her new copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and maybe for the only time said, "I think you should read this." And she was right, of course. My brothers John and Russell and my sister Ann supported whatever I did and read my columns even if they had little interest in the subject. My wife Janice was a bit more discriminating. She only preferred the good ones or the unusual ones, like the one I wrote about the alleged intelligence of the elusive largemouth bats. She reinforced the importance of intellectual honesty in everyone around us, and she carried on cheerfully whenever I took off across the country to cover another story. And she traveled with me far and wide, especially after Jennifer and Brock grew up. And all of them sacrificed something for my freedom of movement. So did my editors and publishers at the Winston-Salem Journal and other newspapers. They gave me freedom of expression. They defended my freedom of speech whenever they had to, which required more spine than you'll find in the fair weather guardians of the First Amendment. Fortunately, most of my interview subjects were quite civilized and cooperative. And many of the people I've written about, and many of the writers that I've written beside, are loyal friends today. I've been lucky that way, and I've been lucky in so many ways. From elementary school through college, certain teachers recognized my affinity for descriptive writing and reacted positively. This happens every day in every school in the state. So it galls me when I hear politicians lump all the teachers together and criticize them for failing to fix every breakdown in our society. I'll admit to an inherent bias. My other grandfather was a high school teacher and a football coach before he became the town manager of Wendell. And for half a century, I've watched teachers and coaches help young folks change their lives for the better. I've seen the modest home where my high school teammate, Carl Lester Crumper, lived and was raised by his loving grandma. I've seen the neighborhood where Rodney Rogers grew up. I've seen the backyard goal where Kay Yao and her sisters and her brother learned to shoot, long before women had tangible futures in basketball. The beauty of sports, the democratic essence of sports really, is that everyone stands on his or her own merits. Success depends on talent and work and persistence and passion, not privilege. These are the basic values that endure long after the cheering fades. I'm more impressed with Carl Lester as an advisor to college students than Carl Lester, the teenage legend. I'm more impressed with Rodney and how he's handled personal tragedy than Rodney and basketball glory. And I'm more impressed with Kay's legacy as a cancer pioneer than her record as a pioneering coach. They represent the best among us, but they aren't alone. This room is full of people whose formal educations began in the North Carolina public schools. People who developed a love for fair competition and helping teammates reach their potential. People who can look back through the clutter and the clatter of modern times and recognize the wisdom of these simple ideas. When I was young, North Carolina was a leader in public education, but we slipped. And we should vastly improve the public schools for a future beyond our time. Not because it's a liberal or conservative thing to do, or the black or white thing to do, but because it's the right thing to do. And also because out there tonight in North Carolina, other kids are sitting in their cars, reading their electronic devices, maybe some of them even reading the New York papers, and they're wondering how their stories will turn out. They deserve a fair chance too.